similar to what Michael Jordan did back in the early 90s, when he elevated the game itself to a whole new level while also making the NBA marketable, as well as more profitable in the process.
Before the 2023 season, the WNBA had grown by 40% viewership.
Imagine stepping onto the court as the most talked about rookie in the WNBA, only to be met with relentless hostility from the very players you once admired. Caitlin Clark, hailed as the next Steph Curry, is facing brutal fouls and cutting remarks from her supposed teammates. Why are the WNBA's veterans so threatened by their league's brightest new star?
It's funny, when you were talking about Caleb Williams, I couldn't help but think about the headlines are saying how he's absorbing the book so well, everyone's so excited to have him. If he starts 0-4, compare that to the 0-4 start that
Financially, the league has been on life support, only surviving thanks to the NBA subsidies. The WNBA has tried expanding, recently adding teams in Detroit and Washington, D.C., hoping to breathe new life into the sport. But let's be real, the excitement around these new additions is pretty lukewarm. The common sentiment seems to be, sure, more teams, but the players are still women. As a diehard basketball fan, I have to admit that until recently, the WNBA didn't even register on my radar. The only trade I remember making headlines was Brittany Griner's swap for a Russian arms dealer, and that was more about politics than sports. Then out of nowhere comes Caitlin Clark. It's like she's single-handedly dragging the WNBA into the spotlight, and you can't help but notice her. Her name was everywhere, and even during the 2024 NBA Finals. And let me tell you, after watching her games and listening to her interviews, it's easy to see why. Caitlin Clark's shooting is out of this world. People are calling her the female Steph Curry, and some even compare her to the legendary Pistol Pete Maravich. These aren't just empty praises, she's genuinely transforming the game. Before she even stepped onto the WNBA court, she was already being talked about alongside the greatest players in history. And the hype is real. Her presence is packing up stadiums and driving up revenue in ways the league has never seen.
Talk viewership, let's talk ticket sales. Bear with me. Ticket sales grew in 2023 by 16% from 2022. Ticket sales have grown by 93% in 2024. What that means is
Ticket sales tell a similar story. In 2023, sales grew by 16% compared to the previous year. But in 2024, with Caitlin drawing crowds, ticket sales surged by 93%. To put that in perspective, without Caitlin, the WNBA would have taken until 2029 or 2030 to reach the numbers they're hitting today. Caitlin Clark did in 5 weeks what would have taken 5 years. Clark's impact isn't just about numbers, though. She's changing the way people think about women's basketball. For the first time in a long while, the WNBA has a player who can be the face of the league, someone they can bank on for years to come. Despite the media attention and the flood of money she's bringing in, many of her peers and former players aren't happy. They see her as hogging the spotlight, but in reality, she's just what the league needs.
Here, rough and crack, and she passed that to us, Mary.
And rightfully so. Not because they're women, but because their sense of entitlement, especially for the lack of entertainment value, genuinely infuriates.
WNBA has a lot more going on beneath the surface than most people realize. Take Candace Wiggins, for instance. Back in 2017, she dropped a bombshell about her experiences in the league, claiming she was bullied relentlessly. And get this, it wasn't just your run-of-the-mill locker room banter. According to Wiggins, the bullying was due to her sexual orientation and popularity. She said she was harassed for being straight in a league where she felt the culture was dominated by LGBTQ players. Wiggins described the environment as toxic and said it broke her spirit. She even cut her career short because she couldn't take it anymore. After Wiggins went public with her claims, other players were quick to deny it. They insisted that her experiences were isolated and didn't reflect the league as a whole. But honestly, when you start piecing together other stories and looking at the broader picture, Wiggins' account starts to seem a lot more credible. You see, the WNBA has always tried to present a united front, but cracks in that facade are becoming more and more apparent. One glaring example of this hostility is what happened with Luka Doncic. So Luka, trying to be a good sport and support women's basketball, makes this harmless video. He gives a shout out to a player, cheering her on and predicting she'll be Rookie of the Year. Pretty cool, right? The Minnesota Lynx didn't see it that way. Instead of thanking him or just staying silent, they shot back with a snarky tweet. Says a guy who hasn't been to a WNBA game all season but just got sent a jersey and recorded a scripted video. Like, wow. Talk about biting the hand that feeds you. Luka was just trying to do something positive, and they just shut him down with this passive-aggressive response. And this isn't just an isolated incident, there's a general atmosphere of passive-aggressive and toxic behavior within the league. The WNBA players and officials often seem more interested in complaining and picking fights than in promoting their sport. Remember that whole debate about pay disparity between the NBA and the WNBA? The players kept insisting they deserved higher pay because the NBA players made more. The argument went, we're not asking to get paid what the men get paid. We're asking to get the same percentage of revenue shared.
We are not asking to get paid what the men get paid. We're asking to get paid the same percentage of revenue shared.
It sounds reasonable on the surface, but the constant whining and lack of understanding of basic economics turned a lot of people off. The culture within the WNBA, as described by Wiggins and evidenced by these incidents, seemed to be a blend of passive-aggressiveness, childishness, and outright hostility. It's like there's this underlying tension that bubbles up to the surface whenever there's a chance to lash out. And for someone like Caitlin Clark, stepping into this environment must feel like walking into a minefield. When you think about it, it's no wonder the league struggles with its image. The WNBA has this incredible opportunity to grow and gain respect, especially with a superstar like Caitlin Clark on the rise. But instead of embracing the positive attention, there's this tendency to push back against anyone who doesn't fit their mold or who threatens the status quo. But before we go to Clark and Diana's personal interactions on and off the court on match day, let's have a look into the match. Take Diana Taurasi, for example. This woman is often hailed as the GOAT of women's basketball, but her attitude towards Caitlin has been less than supportive. When asked if she'd pick Caitlin as the #1 draft pick, Diana smugly responded that she'd choose Paige Beckers over Caitlin Clark without hesitation.
Who are you taking first, Paige or Caitlin?
I'm taking Paige. Next question.
It's like she's trying to put Caitlin in her place before she even has a chance to shine. Taurasi didn't stop there either. When Caitlin was snubbed from Team USA's roster, Diana was quick to remind everyone that making the team is tough and that Caitlin still has a lot to prove. Talk about undermining someone's confidence. And it's not just Taurasi. The media and other players have also jumped on the bandwagon, dismissing Caitlin's skills and contributions. They say she's just good at shooting threes, or that she's only successful because she has a green light to shoot whenever she wants. Seriously? That's like saying Steph Curry is only great because he can hit three-pointers. It completely ignores the rest of Caitlin's game. Her court vision, her passing, her ability to drive to the basket. It's like they're deliberately downplaying her talents to keep her from stealing their spotlight. But the verbal jabs are just a part of the story. Caitlin has also been on the receiving end of some pretty brutal physical aggression on the court. And when I say brutal, I mean it. From the moment she stepped onto the WNBA floor, she's been getting hammered by opponents who seem hell-bent on teaching her a lesson. Just look at some of the hits she's taken. There have been multiple instances where players have gone after her head while she's driving to the basket. It's almost as if they're targeting her specifically to knock her out of the game. One particularly nasty example was during a game against the Chicago Sky. Caitlin took a hard foul from Kennedy Carter that was so vicious it got upgraded to a flagrant foul. Carter's swing hit Clark right on the head, and you could tell it was more about sending a message than playing basketball. Then there was the incident with Breanna Stewart, where Caitlin got leveled by a screen that seemed designed to hurt rather than block. It's one thing to play tough defense, but these actions cross the line into outright hostility. So, what are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments below.